Welcome to the 17th episode of the Animal Riot Podcast, brought to you by Animal Riot Press, a literary press for books that matter. It's your producer, Katie, here, and this episode has been edited to reflect our new name. If you're new to the Animal Riot community, welcome, and you can find out more about us at animalriotpress.com. Now on to the episode with your host, Brian Birnbaum, and today's guest, Jennifer Baker.
I'm your host, Brian Birnbaum. We're here today with Jennifer Baker, who is quite a lot of things, including but not limited to the podcast host of Minorities in Publishing, the recipient of the 2017 Niska NIFA Artist Fellowship, and a 2017 Queen's Council on the Arts New Work Grant. These are all a mouthful. An editor of the Anthology of Everyday People, The Color of Life, a contributing editor at Electric Literature, and of course a widely published writer of fiction and nonfiction. And I recently got a chance to hear her contribution to a panel at AWP on how to make money as a writer, which I found both enlightening and slightly depressing, because that is very difficult. Great. That was a lot. This episode's brand of fuckery is brought to you by the continuing crapulence brought upon us all by AWP. I think we can all agree on that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think I'm on a better trajectory.
You're already feeling good.
Well, I was in Boston, so I was like, got to get it together. Yeah.
That'll do it. And well, I should also say our producers are on today.
Yeah,
Katie,
I was about
Rainey.
to say, I'm here.
Yeah.
Hey, Katie.
I have a mic this time. Normally I'm just signing at Brian.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Over guests.
Actual ASL. For the record. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to say anything else? Add to what I... No, you're good. Yeah, that was a lot. I mean, but the thing is, if you go to your website, there's a lot more. So, I kind of
What's your website? Let's go ahead and plug that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Jennifer N, for my middle name, Nicole, Baker.com. So JenniferNBaker.com, because Jennifer Baker was taken.
Oh.
And so that's fine.
So was Brian
Same with
Birnbaum.
mine. Yep.
He's BrianSBirnbaum.com.
Yeah, there you go.
You see, we got to brand how we brand.
Yeah.
And you can, on your website, you can go directly to Minorities in Publishing through the website too,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is an excellent podcast.
Thank you.
One of the many lit podcasts I've been writing about. So.
And your
excited
website's
about that.
awesome.
Oh, thank you.
It's very well made. My Squarespace site.
Yeah, redesigned.
Pails.
Bonnie Chan did that for me because I couldn't be bothered. And it's a tax write-off, like I was saying.
Oh, nice.
That's not. Yeah,
Very
see,
nice.
now we got to get into that because you know how writers need to manage their money or attempt to.
Very apropos just all around because Katie and I just did our taxes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was
that
rough.
too.
Brian threw a temper tantrum before
I did
this.
a few times.
I don't blame you. They're horrible. And
Yeah.
for this administration, it's horrible to have to do taxes.
And there was a point where I owed $3,300, and I was like, okay, something's wrong. We had to backtrack. But anyway, it's neither here nor there.
That got resolved.
Yeah, it got resolved.
Okay, good.
He did not
we're
end up
fine.
owing $3,300.
Yeah.
I hope they're paying you.
Yes.
They are.
That's how it ended
Good.
up.
They are.
As
Yeah.
it should be.
They should be. Yes, right. Yeah. Because as you discussed on the panel, all of us in here are experiencing credit card debt. It's it's a tough world out there.
It's real.
But yeah, okay. So let's start with something that we said we were going to talk about. Katie, it looks like you have something to say.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I want to start with your podcast. The mission, how it came about, all that good stuff, and whether it does relate, if one spawned from the other, with we need diverse books.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Listen.
Yes is
you
the
hear-
answer
I'm
to all of
nodding.
that.
Can you hear the wind blowing? Okay. All right. Yeah. So yeah, just tell us what your podcast is about, and then we'll go from there.
I mean, it's pretty good branding. It's called Minorities in Publishing. And essentially, the podcast partner I had at the time, Bev, who you can hear on the first probably dozen or so episodes, we both worked in publishing for a while. This will be my 16th year in publishing. Just in publishing, full-time job. I had all that since 2013 fall.
Wait.
I got...
I'm not gonna lie, you just dated yourself in a way that I did not expect.
What?
16 years ago, I was not an adult, and I thought you were about my age. That's the way it looks.
Oh, I appreciate that, because someone asked me to be on a panel of women over 40, and I was like, I'm not over 40. Why did you assume that?
Wow, opposite reaction. There you go.
And I was like, cool. It was like, this is not cool at all.
What did you say, and how did that email response go?
It was in the DMs, thankfully. And so
how weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not the most fucked up thing you'll get in the DMs, though. That's the thing,
it wasn't.
You know?
It wasn't. It was just, I was like, I don't appreciate that you assumed it, because there's nothing wrong with being 40. But at the same time, I don't want you to just say, hey, I'm having this panel with people who are several years older than you, and you should be part of it, because I assumed you were older than you are. And it's like, yeah, I'm not. But that's fine. And it was like not fine, but I was polite. In sum, I was polite.
Fair enough.
Good. It's the most you can do.
Honest mistake. So yeah, I've been in publishing since 2003, because I graduated college at City College, not too far from where we are, in spring of 2003. And then I was very, very lucky to be able to get a job several months after I graduated, which can be unheard of for people nowadays.
Yeah.
Like getting a job right after. It was a crappy paying job, but it was a job.
What was it in?
I was an editorial assistant at one of the academic presses at St. Martin's Press. So I worked near the Flatiron, but not in the Flatiron. So I worked in the like Madison Square area, and we all made like $28,000.
Big money.
I mean, I was engaged at the time and living with my fiance, so it was fine. And all my coworkers had roommates or lived in Jersey City. So it was we all came in, and none of them, I think maybe one of them is still in publishing. So all that said, by the time that's 2014, we've been in it'd been a decade that I've been in publishing. And We Need Diverse Books did start that time. It started in May, and the podcast went official in August of 2014.
Oh, so they were the same year. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they both occurred the same year. And my podcast partner at the time just said, you know what we're not talking about? The people in the industry, the people like us who are actually working in it. We're talking about We Need Diverse Books, which is important, but that's outward facing, right?
But also the gatekeepers themselves.
Exactly. Who's working in the industry, because it's cyclical. To just say, oh, we need more people of color or more,
because how much more likely is it to get a book from a person of color if you have more people of color in there?
Exactly.
Right.
And how are they going to be steered? Who's going to be marketing them? Who's buying them? Who's distributing them? Who's doing every facet of the industry? Where are we as women of color? And my podcast partner is a queer woman of color. And so we just said, let's have conversations with other people in the industry so that people know we exist. Because she's like, I don't think people think we exist. And that's really where it started from. It was really an inception of, it kind of was inspired. It definitely was inspired by We Need Diverse Books. And I had worked with them for about 3 years at the time, from around the time they had begun. But me and my partner at the time, we really, really wanted to look at the internal aspects of the industry and kind of shed light on it, because it seems very mystifying to people. Even though for us it isn't, because we work in it, or I've subscribed to Writer's Digest and Poets and Writers, but there's so many aspects that aren't talked about at all, let alone in a magazine. So that's really where it came from. And of course, when you start, you're kind of like, who's going to be on the podcast? So we just had our friends for the first
that's how
4 episodes. And then you get some street cred, and then you're like, hey, VP of this, will you be on my podcast? So that people can see, because what I found, and maybe you found this too, people are very kind of apprehensive when they don't know, like, how's this going to go? I don't know.
And it's really gone 2 ways. I mean, even people that I've suggested to Katie, like we had Dave Wiswell on, and he was great. And like at first, Katie was like, "Oh, I'm not sure." Like when he reached out to us, and then she met him, she was like, "Oh yeah, he's cool."
Yeah,
like,
you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
But in terms of people coming on the podcast, people have been really apprehensive at first. They're like, "Well, what do I have to talk about, or what do I know?" And it's like, "Are you kidding?"
Kind of like more of a self-esteem issue. Yeah, right.
Or what was really weird was when the people said, "Yes, I'll be on the podcast," and then would ghost. And that hasn't happened a lot. That happened like 4 or 5 times over almost 5 years. But it was just really weird to get some people say yes and then just ghost. And then I would see them at a party and then it's awkward now because I got to be nice. I'm not mad, but I'm just kind of like, why? And then you're kind of like, is she pissed? And I'm like,
as someone who is like a very, like I used to have a very big phobia of like public speaking and stuff. I can kind of understand it, but like that is a bummer. You know,
I mean, just say no.
Yeah. Or like, or if, you know, at some point it's just like, oh, hey, like, you know what? Honestly, I am scared as shit, like, you know, just be honest, it's fine, like I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna say, oh, you shouldn't be, like, you know.
Exactly. I mean, this will be edited and but it was very interesting. A couple people did say, I just want to tell you I hate my voice and that's why I never replied to you and but some people was just really weird, and I think, I don't know, I'm not gonna kind of pull stuff out of the, you know, and it was just weird. It was just very weird.
Is this when you were, so are you at Electric Lit at this point? Are you?
No, I've been at Electric Lit for almost 2 years, and the podcast will be 5. So really, I joined Electric Lit officially September 2 years ago. So right around the time Jess Zimmerman came in as the new editor-in-chief. Okay. I came in as well on her heels. But the podcast has been around since 2014.
Where were you at the time? What were you working on as your, you know, quote unquote day job?
Or the one I'm still doing, a production editor at
cool.
University Press, which is what pays my rent.
Yeah.
It pays it pays all my bills. Let's be real.
We discussed it a little bit at AWP in front of hundreds of people.
Well, I wanted to be honest to say,
of course.
I think of everybody. I don't know about Emily's situation because I know she runs Emily Books. I don't know what that is, but
is that the one that's affiliated with Coffee House?
I think so.
Yeah, I think is it poetry?
No, she does prose. She might do some poetry, but I
gotta look into this. Coffee House is like my favorite press.
Yeah, it's a subsidiary or imprint. Cool. So maybe she and I are the only ones with like basically full-time jobs that were on that panel.
Wow.
Yeah. Since Dennis had recently quit theirs, and Michelle's a full-time student, and Marissa had said her job is basically the rumpus, and it's unpaid. So,
it's unpaid.
Yeah, she vocally said that. She's like, she works 80 hours unpaid for the past 2 years.
Yeah. 80 hours unpaid.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not lie. We're doing a lot of unpaid hours.
Yeah.
So I can understand when you really love something, you love it, you know?
Yeah.
How many episodes of Minorities in Publishing have you done now?
That
5
are
years
live,
later?
85.
Oof.
With several more that I have to edit. And that's been because it's unpaid. And so it has gone by the wayside. Yeah. And that's sad because it's my project and I really do love it when I sit down and edit it. But then I got to edit this. And I have to do my taxes. I have to edit this and I have to read these essays for electrical. I have to edit this and I have to do this. So I feel consistently behind. And unfortunately, the unpaid thing that I love gets the shaft in a well way. So I'm thinking at the 5-year mark, I have to figure out whether it's going to continue or whether I have to readjust what it is. Meaning it hasn't been a bi-weekly podcast in months.
Is that what it's meant to be?
It was meant to be. And it was for a good 4 years.
Wow.
Good effort.
Yeah,
that is quite impressive.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
So I have to figure out what's
and I remember
on.
at AWP you talking about, you did mention that you don't want to monetize it, right? You were pretty strong.
I don't have the time to monetize it, but also I feel when Bev and I had started it, we really didn't see this as of interest outside of our industry, which makes it harder, right? Because this is a niche.
True. Very true.
So it would really have to remain within the industry and then kind of be partnered up with somebody else. The way, fiction, nonfiction is part of Hub. And the way that all these entities are kind of doing their own podcast now. Like a lot of literary magazines or digital sites are now doing their own podcast. Book Riot, and they sell ads. They actually take breaks for commercial and says, hey, this episode is brought to you by Penguin Random House. By XXX.
And then they repeat it like 50 times. And I'm just like,
and I don't want to do that. I understand why they do that. I don't want to do that. And I'm a little bit of a control freak. But, so it's just a matter of what way can I kind of put it in good hands that I trust that it'll still be open to people, because I take self-published people. I really like talking to industry people, and I feel as though if I partnered with an entity, it would become a publishing specific thing that is really feeding into whoever's paying the most money. So
Yeah.
if I get money from Penguin Random House, I have to always talk about Penguin Random House authors. If I get money from Macmillan, I always have to talk about Macmillan authors. And that's my concern. Is that, I mean, Well Read Black Girl was dealing with the same thing, was that if publishers give her money, what does that mean? And what do they expect from that? So that's why, you see all these, also the video channels like Epic Reads for Harper Teen, they only do Harper stuff because they want to create social media buzz within their own industry rather than put it outside and make it kind of like a community-based
But
thing.
honestly, I feel like if presses were, especially like indie presses, if you're like trying to, I like that just feels so siloed and like a dead end to me that like you could create so many more avenues for listeners if you were just more inclusive of all different like publishers and authors on there rather than just plug in your own stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of I think I see it as a symptom of like the big five's overarching problem.
And potentially even Amazon, because I don't discriminate.
Yeah.
So I would talk to Amazon authors too. So Amazon has
Like
a crap
self-published
load of money.
or little A.
Self-published or from the imprints.
Yeah, yeah.
They have a crap load of money. So if it became a monetary thing, there's that kind of expectation. It doesn't feel great. So
Yeah.
It's kind of, and honestly, from what I won't say anything like too much because I don't know too much, but from what it seems like with little A at least, it's like it seems like they're following in the footsteps of the big five in terms of like not really supporting their authors as much as I think they should. I might be completely speaking out of turn. I don't know, but like
I've heard various things from friends who have been published with little A because Vivian Lee is with little A and she's amazing.
Oh, I didn't know she was.
Yeah, Vivian Lee. And Vivian Lee is such a champion. She's a wonderful editor. She goes specifically for, marginalized artists and has published a few like James Hahn Matson is a Vivian Lee author and he was great to talk to. And so I think, it's hard when you're part of a machine, right?
yeah, that's what
Where
I'm saying.
you're,
Like
the
feeding publicity and like putting money behind the books and stuff like that,
And that's
which is
so
like
separate from her job.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you can, as an editor, you can be behind a book so much, like you pick it up, you're like, trumping it up so much. But really, like, we really want to say, if we're picking up your book, we're gonna put our weight behind it. We're not gonna waste your entire like this X number of years that you've worked on this thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So regarding the podcast, do you have any like favorite episodes?
Oh yeah, I was thinking that.
Yeah, or like themes, episodes, guests, like any of that, like
If somebody was just tuning in for the first time, what episode should they listen to?
A lot of times I tell people to listen to the marketing episode, which aired last year, last fall.
Yeah.
No, last spring. And it was, funny enough, it was with Bianca Salvant, who did the marketing on my anthology, Everyday People, and she was so wonderful. I love Bianca. And she's at a big five. And then I had Jaleesa Corey, who's at an indie, Lee and Low. And they're both in marketing. And I said, I wanted to pair them both up as women of color to talk about what are your experiences in marketing and what do you talk about? And they were literally yin and yang. Like Bianca went to an HBCU and Jaleesa's like, I went upstate to an all-white college.
Like Ithaca.
Yeah. It was like Jaleesa had come into publishing after doing internships in apparel, and Bianca had always wanted to be in publishing. And, Bianca had so many books that she was working with at a big five, where Jaleesa's was like way tighter, and they had a very small group and they can focus on every group. So it was very interesting, the juxtaposition of their conversation, as they agreed on a lot of points and then their experiences were just so different. And they were both very honest about this is what marketing is and this is what can happen and this is where you can get lost. And this is, our job is with sales. And if sales doesn't like your book, there's nothing we can do about that.
And did they agree on those subjects?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they had just very different experiences being with two different kind of, so it worked out, that pairing of me just saying, I was going to have them both on separately. And then I said, can we get together and talk about
that was
this?
a good move, right?
Yeah, so sometimes that works, like the debut episode with Leland Chuck, who does 713.
He was on your first episode?
No, he was in the first year.
Oh, okay.
He was in the first year with Mira Jacob, him, and Sophia, and I forget Sophia's name. So I wanted to have a debut episode, so I had a self-published author an indie, which was Leland, and someone with the big 5, which was Mira Jacob.
I see.
So I talked to them each for like 20 minutes to half an hour, and then edited that down and compiled that into an episode where you can hear each person's journey, just so you can get, so like kind of when I am able to do these kind of combo episodes where you can get multiple perspectives, that works even better. I mean, not to say the single person one doesn't, but I think those two really speak to showcasing the aim of the podcast, which is this is how the industry works, and these are different perspectives that you need to know about. Rather than, oh, I'm just hearing from the big 5. You need to hear from everybody, and to know that a big 5 person can have a bad experience or a great experience.
Right.
Just as much as a person with the indie can have an amazing experience or a not great experience. And so
those combo episodes are fun, but they take longer to edit.
oh my God. And then getting everyone together, and then the sound quality is different because one person's on the phone, one person was in person, one person was on Skype. So you'll notice the sound quality for that. The debut episode is very, very different. Very, very different.
Yeah, same with ours.
Yeah.
We have like people calling in, and it's just like the sound quality is terrible.
And this is like, do you have birds? Do we hear birds? Is that what we're hearing?
we might hear. Well, occasionally we hear a Rosetta.
Yeah, Rosetta might speak.
Just chill.
Is there like a moment or like an email or something, like a favorite something of yours that like indicates like we did this episode, we were working on this, and like you can see how it's manifesting in like maybe your audience or the people you work with as related to the podcast, or even the We Need Diverse Books initiative, like anything like that? Is there like because I guess a good like analogy is like we're all writers.
Yep.
We sit in a room alone and we write, and it has zero impact on anyone. And then like,
moment.
finally, hopefully, it does get out into the world. And then when it does, like, you might get like an email from somebody, oh my God, like I love this part or something. Is there something like that with your podcast where you're like, okay, this is like, I can see people are listening. They're like, oh, I'm better understanding the industry or whatever.
Yeah. The Twitter is the best way for me to actually gauge that. And also the influx of requests that I've had over the past 2 years from publicists and authors. So when the podcast first started, it was all me asking.
Yeah.
There weren't really people asking me to be on it. And then it became, can I be on it? I really want to be on your podcast. And you're like, wait, what? Why would you want to? Seriously? So that's been really great because it's been seen for publicists specifically as a route for their authors to get visibility. But also it's really, really gratifying. I was at AWP, as we all, which we established we're still recovering from.
Still
Well, you're
hungover.
good.
Yeah, you've already been
We'll
on
see.
other
Like, watch
trips
next
and
week. I'll get
panels.
the AWP plague that happens every year. Knock wood, please.
Oh God, yeah. What, is there a plague coming?
I assume it's just like the 12,000 people being in the same convention center.
Basically,
Like
hugging,
passing-
shaking hands,
Drinking,
probably,
whatever.
sharing, not getting sleep,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I saw one of my guests, S.J. Sindhu, who I had been on with recently. She was on last year. And she said, can I just tell you that yours was the best interview I've done because you were the most considerate person to interview me, and you didn't make me feel like I had to explain anything, and you listened to what I had to say, and it was just a good banter of conversation. And that meant a lot to me because it meant she felt safe.
Yeah.
As a queer woman of color.
Yeah.
She felt safe in this space that I had created. And we had so many hiccups, like the fire alarm at my job went, the Google Hangouts wasn't working. So literally I was on the phone with her for 20 minutes.
Those are a lot of reasons not to feel safe.
For the fire alarm not to go off so we could actually continue the interview. And that just meant, that was really huge. And to hear that also from like Jenny Zhang to say like you were one of my favorite interviews.
That's awesome.
Because, I wasn't pigeonholing them. I was just like, so how are you feeling about this? And do you experience this? And da-da-da. So coming at them from a place of like, I actually want to talk about your book and your craft, but I want to talk about you as a person and not just talk about you being Asian or you writing about trauma or, I wasn't trying to pigeonhole them. So from the interviewer perspective, it just made me feel really, really good to know that I'm doing something that makes them feel gratified.
Yeah.
And then from those who reach out, just seeing the statistics and saying, people really gravitated to the marketing episode, or people really like James Hahn Matson, and then seeing James Hahn Matson and saying, you know, I've never gotten tagged that much on Twitter from an interview. And I said, seriously? And it's not hundreds, you know, again, it's a niche market, but the fact that he's seeing and people are saying, I'm getting this book now or something like that. And then they purposely tag him or, you know, and that just means a lot. It means something, you know, it means the listenership is there.
Well, 85 episodes. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment.
We'll definitely get to 100, if anything. We will get to 100.
And then you'll reassess.
I will reassess after 100.
Would you pass it on to somebody worthy, or?
Maybe. I don't know. Or just let it stand. I don't know. We'll see. Or maybe I'll do seasons.
I mean, it stands as a valuable tool and resource as it, you know, on its own. Like, and it's not like dated. I mean, it's very, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't just take all the episodes down or anything like that. I think there's value in them being up, but maybe I'll do seasons. So maybe I'll do it for 6 months a year, and then those 6 months are like the only time rather than year round. So she's like, podcasts are boring.
She's a princess.
Well, when we had the Amazon Book Club guys on here, she wouldn't stop barking. So
oh, really?
Because tall men are just not
her thing. She
not copacetic.
Yeah, Rosetta. Against the patriarchy.
She knows best. Yep. All right. Well, how about electric literature? How do you feel about that? Because that is kind of like...
That's not in my control.
I do kind of see electric literature as kind of like a new age mecca of like publishing, even though it's not like a, you know, one of the houses, like quote unquote, you know what I mean? But like everyone knows about it. Like those like, you know, those catapult or like electric lit essays or like stuff like that. Like, you know, everyone sees those, you know?
And Catapult is technically, I mean, we have the same publisher.
So what's your experience been like there? And are there pros and cons you want to talk about, like related back to your podcast and the work you're doing there and stuff like that, you know?
Well, it's so separate because I'm not in the office. Because electric literature actually does have an office.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have an office in
that
Brooklyn.
doesn't surprise me. Because Catapult has their own office too, right?
Yeah, they have their own office in near the Flatiron.
Yeah.
So Electric Lit and Catapult used to be in the same building, and then Electric Lit needed to separate because Catapult was expanding, and so
I mean,
you're
making it when you got your own like Cards of Humanity sort of game.
Yeah, y'all have invested.
We did,
Thank
we
you.
do.
Paper cuts, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I saw that and I was like, okay, I have to spend $20 for this paper cut.
And and it's very topical because one of the cards in there is white women in publishing. And the first time I saw that, I was like, yeah, I guess this is good.
Don't they have a To Kill a Mockingbird one? It's
yes.
What's his face, but racist or something?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But doesn't it say? I think it says something like Atticus, but not racist.
Oh,
or something like that.
Yeah, that was a big moneymaker for us.
Really?
Yeah. I don't mean in terms of, we are now rich. I mean, as in they sold out at AWP.
Yeah.
Everyone.
That's cool.
Yeah, we were kind of surprised by that because we had the Read More Women totes, and that went like gangbusters last year at AWP. So we assumed totes. Totes are the thing, right? But
people want their entertainment.
Come on.
You know?
But apparently paper darts was the thing. So there you go. So my experience has been great because I really think Jess was a great addition to, especially and you've probably noticed this, it's changed. It's done a complete 180 in terms of the content. And it's not to say that the content itself has gone from essays to something else. It's, if you notice who's contributing, what the voices are, what the topics are, it's definitely way more conscious of being representative. It's definitely more female-centered. And Jess is a hardcore feminist, and Halima's a feminist too. And I think them combined really had a vision, especially Jess had a vision, and she's just like, I want to publish as many women as possible. And also conscious of the fact that she wanted to publish more women of color because we weren't represented. And I had said that when I had met with Halima. I was like, yeah, it's not very diverse.
Was this early on?
Yeah.
Or did you have to
earn some cred? I mean, Halima knew about me from the podcast, which is just kind of, again, it kind of circles back to when you had asked at AWP, do I make money from the podcast? And I was like, nope.
Yeah.
But I have gotten money through the podcast. So I don't get it directly from it. I get it through it because then it associates me as like kind of a expert. I'm using air quotes.
So you're talking about like the panels you do and stuff like that.
Yeah, the discussion, the level of discussion.
Indirect.
Yeah, because it makes it. It's funny because then people think I know everybody, and I keep saying I don't know everybody. And then I show a picture with me and Jasmine Ward, and I'm like, God damn it.
No big deal.
That doesn't help. That doesn't help at all. But
I mean, from where I'm sitting from, I can understand where people might get that idea.
yeah, they see you're all these events. You're talking to all these people. You know everybody.
If I didn't have Katie, I would be completely isolated from the world. I would just be in this room working on my little stories by myself.
Big stories. They're big stories.
Big stories. Sure. My big boy stories.
What's been the most exciting thing at Electric Lit to come out recently that you're proud of or excited about?
One of my most favorite acquisitions, one was Marcus Gonzalez, who I don't know if y'all know Marcus. He's published a few stories, but more so essays. Mm-hmm. He's a queer Latinx cis gay man, and that's double. I said queer already. A cis man, and he was one of the first acquisitions I had, and his essay really did well on Electric Lit, and it was called. We retitled it to "When Good Writing Means White Writing." That was a very, very good essay. It's a little controversial to certain circles.
That's the title, When Good Writing Means White Writing?
Yes, because he was talking about being a PhD student and teaching students of color what good writing is and dealing with faculty who deemed good writing to be white writing. I wish I had
read this already so we could talk about this right now.
Yeah, it's a really, really good essay.
I'm looking it up for later.
Very good essay. And then one recently was by Alejandra Oliveira, which looked at Borders and Virginia Woolf.
Oh. Yeah. Borders and Virginia Woolf.
Yeah, like the issue of like how Trump is trying to close borders, and also Virginia Woolf because she brought in the theme of rivers.
I saw that. That was, I think that's in one of my tabs that's open.
Yeah, that
like
sounds
the
really
to read tab, to read tab.
Huh. Yeah, it was such a beautiful, beautiful essay because you wouldn't think, even in my description of it, it's kind of like the marketing pitch of like, yeah, it's an essay about that thematically weaves rivers by using borders and immigration and Virginia Woolf. And that's just like the summary. But when you read it, it's so well done. And when you get essays like that, it's just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is amazing. And again, they felt like they saw me right on Twitter because I'm always like, read the freaking thing before you submit to me. Well, I hate rejecting people unnecessarily. Stop it. By the way, email me. Jennifer@electriclit.com.
But that's a good point. I was going to ask, like, just because a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast and a lot of what we're trying to do is build a community, and so people that feel outside of the like quote unquote New York bubble of like publishing feel like, how do I get involved? Like, how many, like, are you trying to look for like any cold submissions from like women of color or people of color, just so that like other people can feel involved? Because I know a lot of these essays get published by reference, and which is not a bad thing because like some of these people are really great writers.
Absolutely.
There's a reason that they're known. But I don't know. Just enlighten us for like what the procedure is with how you guys get submissions and decide what to publish.
Well, different areas of Electric Lit are kind of headed by different people. So recommended reading, which is poetry and fiction, that's the big person in charge is Halima, and then also Brandon Taylor works for that, and I believe Aaron Barnett also works for recommended reading, and I think Kelly moved over from electric literature to recommended reading. So like the umbrella is electric literature, but then we have imprints or verticals, and so the recommended reading one is not done by me or Jess or Joe. Like we don't do that one. And then there's the commuter, which also is kind of tied to recommended reading because it's like flash fiction and stuff like that. And like they like graphic stuff too. So like graphic novels or, snippets, comics, stuff like that. And they're open every so often. They had short period that just opened the beginning of April. Electric Lit opens quarterly, and we're nonfiction specific. And that's me, Jess, Joe Lou, and I believe Erin does some stuff for Electric Lit too. But I think the bulk of her stuff is there. And so for us, it's different play, but everyone sees us as Electric Lit, so they assume we're all just like this big, we are a happy family, but it's just like, yeah, no, I don't do that. I only do nonfiction. But for me, as an editor, editors can take stuff anytime they want. So that's why I continually post about it on Twitter and on Facebook and say, send me stuff, because
So it's just a matter of when it would get put up. So like,
yeah. If it's timely, obviously, I would try to work on it faster or send it to Jess to work on it faster. If I couldn't, I respond to everything. So Jess is getting pitches, but she's also looking at the submittable. And the submittable gets hundreds. And the recommended reading gets even more. They get like thousands because it's fiction.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because it's any type of fiction. I mean, they have a very kind of specific, they kind of like weird stuff. They like kind of experimental, But it's fiction, so it's so open, they get so many things. Whereas for Electric Lit, ours is really like, is it tied to books, media? You know, is it analysis? Is it a personal essay? Is it an interview? Is it a book list? Like, ours is a bit more controlled. So I respond to everything I get, which is also what takes me a little bit more time.
Yeah.
And I think people, I don't think people take advantage of it, but I think people get excited because I actually will tell people, I read the piece. If I feel like there's something I can edit, I edit it. But most time I actually read it and I will give you like very specific feedback on what's not working. I mean, if it literally is just, this makes no sense for our publication. It's just about my, no offense, Rosie, but you know, like it's just about my dog. And it has no tie to like media, literature. That's an auto reject. But I will tell you, that's the reason I'm rejecting it. But if it's an essay that's been written, I will tell you, hey, you know, you're stuffing 18 things in here. You're contradicting yourself. The voice isn't right. It sounds more tradie mag than lit mag or something like that. So I try to give that consideration to writers. So, you know, you're not just getting a form rejection. You're getting concrete feedback on why this is not working for us.
And they also know that they are actually being read, which is, I think is important. I mean, like that's we've discussed that so much just for us, and we don't have nearly the amount that you have to read.
How many submissions are you juggling?
I get dozens. Again, because I don't go through the submittable. And also my email for Electric Literature isn't all over the place the way Jess's is. Hers is on her Twitter. And she's the editor-in-chief, and she has a bigger following than me, so obviously she would get a bit more. But she goes through the submittable, and so that's a trial in itself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I was in the office, they might ask me to do that, but I am not, so. They know I have a full-time job, so I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it. But, yeah.
But you really enjoy it.
I do.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it. It's just, you know, then I feel guilty when I can't get back to people fast enough, but at the same time, I just put out an out of office that says, thank you for reaching me. I will get back to you in several weeks, which makes me feel better because then they're getting some kind of reply that says, I acknowledge you have sent me something. Whereas when people didn't, they'd be like, hey, did you read it? I sent it to you. Did you read it? Did you read it? Did you read it? And you're just like, oh my God.
That's already
it's there. It started in my inbox. I swear to God.
You know, that's a really funny thing that you bring up because, like, I have obviously been dealing with that from the reading series for the last 5 years because people get really anxious. And it's like, I mean, when we first started that, we were getting hundreds of submissions and we would try to read them monthly and it was just insane. It was so much. Now we do them on a rolling basis and our inbox gets quite full, but people get really angsty when you don't. I should do that auto reply.
I've been guilty of that a lot, being angsty and being like,
I have had to tell him so many times.
After how many days though? Has it been after
I'll
5 days or 5 weeks?
Longer than that. Usually when it's like at least like a few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I generally have to say to him, like, these people are probably all doing this for free and have huge jobs and, you know, are doing it because they love it. But, like, they just are swamped. Like, people, I mean, it's just people with huge lives. Like, you have to give them time.
One of my biggest issues was not asking whether they'd read it. like it was when people actually accepted something of mine, and then I didn't hear from them again for like a few weeks after that. And then I'd be like, oh my God, what's happening? And I'd go like freak out.
I've been that person too. I was like, yeah, we want this. I'll give you edits.
And then it waits.
3 weeks later, it's
That's
like,
happening
here are the
right
edits.
now. Yeah. I have something that's going to go up on LitHub, and like it's
Congrats.
yeah, thanks. And it's the same thing, but now I'm like way more relaxed about it, but like I've gone through it. But yeah, it's the same thing. And I just know it's like they're probably not going to get back to you when they said they would. And like I understand it, and like I get it now. So I feel better. You know?
I still feel guilty because I say 2 weeks, and I mean it when I say it.
Right. Right.
And then it's like, crap, I got sick, or I was traveling, or my full-time job got busy. And this past 2 months have just been horrible. Not horrible. It could have been way worse, but it's like my computer died at my full-time job.
Yeah.
So that takes me out of commission for 2 days. And then my authors were difficult. And then everyone was sending me stuff late. And then everyone wanted to get on the phone. So these things that are kind of concentrated in my full-time job, that if everything had gone as planned, I would not be behind theoretically in other areas. And so, yes, I am way behind on many people. And it's funny because I said, I'm at AWP. And then they said, I know you're at AWP, but, and you're just like, oh my God.
I got so many of those emails.
Like they acknowledge that you are not here and then say, however, did you do that thing?
Yeah.
Well,
No,
it's
I
an
didn't.
email that basically just goes, I'll be waiting. I'm here.
But they're real chill. They're really polite. Like, I hope you're doing well. And I totally understand if I just want to make sure that you saw that email. And I just never, I don't think I've been that person. And I think it's because I've had the privilege of being in publishing where you're just like, they'll get to you.
Yeah.
If they haven't gotten to you in a month, then you do something. If
You
they haven't gotten
know.
back to you
Yeah.
6 weeks,
Right.
then you do something.
Yeah.
So
Well, you do
Right.
so much for the lit community. Like you just do so much in general. I mean, with the podcast and everything. How's your own writing going? I know you write a ton. I see all your tweets that's like work in progress. So many something words makes me feel bad about myself.
oh, don't feel bad. Join in. Join the fun.
Well, I'm yeah, right.
Hashtag WIP.
All
Right?
there.
Yeah.
Hashtag M writing when it's like,
Yeah.
no, you're on Twitter. That's what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Exactly.
I know. I love it. Sometimes I do go on Twitter and I'm like, I really love this community, but like so many of the tweets are like, should I name should I name my character Kayla or Roger or and I'm just like oh man.
A lot in the writing community. I
Yeah.
think people just like want to tweet. Like
They do.
want interactions. I get it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
writing's lonely, and so like you're like, you know what?
That
Let me
makes
just
sense.
send out this tweet and get people to
Okay.
respond.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
That's fair enough.
Okay. That's cool. Mine is actually going very well because I figured out my practice.
What's your practice?
My practice is, as you probably saw the hashtag, like 45 scenes, 45 days. That's
Oh yeah,
like
what
my
is
life.
that? What are you?
I haven't seen that,
So
actually.
yeah, what I needed to do for myself was the issue at hand. It was continually that I was putting these kind of parameters on myself that wasn't realistic. So do an hour a day. An hour a day doesn't sound like a lot of time, right? But if I did 20 minutes on the subway and then I got home late and then I was ready to go to bed and it's like, crap, I got to write for 40 minutes. I don't want to do that, but I'm going to make myself write for 40 minutes. And that wasn't working. Where it used to work. So the things change also, right? Your practice changes as your life changes.
Definitely.
And I'm way more busy than I was 5 years ago.
I actually think it's dangerous to like put yourself in a box and say, no, this is what I did before. I have to do this.
Yeah, it
No,
just
I
says,
agree.
like if you're a parent or anything, you like,
Right.
God forbid you lose your job or
Yeah.
your caretaker, anything, you move to a different state, you just never know.
Or you just worked on something for a really long time. And you just need a break or something like that.
Yeah, and
anything.
that's real.
Yeah.
And so for me, I realized I needed to just equate it to something that I can do and be okay with having done a little bit. So scenes. So I figured I would do a scene a day and do it for a finite amount of days, like 60 days, 90 days. Every day I had to write a scene. And the scene could be super short. It could be, she walked into the kitchen, saw that there was no food, and left. I didn't write that. But, that's an example.
Yeah.
And that would be a scene. That's a moment in a piece. And then I would just be done. That would be it. Or I could sit and really be on a roll and write hundreds or thousands of words that day. And so I did that. And once I did that, it worked because I sat down, I did it. I could have done it for 15 minutes. I could have done it for 45 minutes, but I did it and then I was done. And I never had to do it again unless I wanted to that day. And that was just way more doable. So it was, if I got something done on the subway to work, I didn't have to worry about doing it on the way home. If I did it on the way home, then I didn't have to worry about if I did it during my lunch break. And again, it could be any length. And that really worked for me.
And so you're doing that now. What's the project you're working on right now?
I jump around because I work on so many things at the same time, which is a good or bad thing. I don't know. But I'm a big believer in breaks too. So I need to take breaks from things.
Yeah.
So if I've been working on a big novel, I can't look at that after a month. Let me look at that essay. Let me look at that essay that I drafted a few weeks, years ago.
Yeah. I do the same
does
thing.
that work out? And so that's, it's essays, it's short fiction, it's a novel. And so for this latest round, I did 90 and then I did 60 and then I did 45 and then I think I'll do 30 and then probably go back to 90 and do it. But then I take breaks after that too. So after I did the 90, I took a month off. After I did the 60, I took a month off. After I did that, I took a month off and took, and so on and so on. And so I think the big thing that it's been a novel. And I'm almost done looking at the full draft of it and just
gutting it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been great. I look at
it's the best
printed
part.
out 300 pages.
It's the best part.
Do you have a title?
Forgive Me Not. Yeah. It's
Do you
looking
want
at
to talk
incarceration.
What's that?
It's looking at incarceration.
We have had 2 episodes about that on this podcast.
Already?
Yeah.
We had, you know Kate Smythe.
You should check them out.
Yeah.
She was on
With Devin for the first one.
With Devin for the first one because she's the director of PEN America's prison writing, and then the second episode we had Sergio De La Pava on. We're huge Sergio fans here.
You knew
Real
we
big.
couldn't we couldn't go an episode.
There's
without
not one
mentioning them.
podcast
it's like a running
episode
joke
where we don't mention
It's
him.
like I'm basically I need a restraining order. It's like a thing. Yeah, they're just I idolize them. Him and his wife Susanna are just like
most amazing people. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we did 2 episodes on prison writing and prison reform and stuff. That was it was really fun.
Check those out. Especially the one with Sergio. I mean, the one with Devin's great, but but with Kate's and Sergio, I think might be like my
I
favorite
love
episode.
Kate so much.
Oh yeah, she has
great.
she has the best podcast voice I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Because she's a poet.
Yeah.
It's like silk chocolate. It's just like I don't know. It's just great.
I've known Kate's for over a decade.
Wow.
Did you see her at AWP?
I did at the Penn booth. I judged the Writing for Justice one last year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she was the leader for that. She was wonderful. Yeah, she's just a wonderful person.
Yeah,
so
she's great.
She's great.
So your novel is about, you said mass incarceration?
Mm-hmm. And that's as much as I'll say.
Okay,
Good.
fair enough.
Good.
Fair enough.
I respect it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to talk about indie presses now.
Yes, let's talk about indie presses.
Let's do that. Well, do you guys want to start with like the responsibility that like indie presses have, or just presses in general for? I would really like to talk about that. Just
let's talk about it.
What is we can.
What
can
are
go
they,
from there.
Brian?
What's
our responsibility?
Our response, like in general,
your mission. What is your mission?
God's work. We're doing God's work. So I want to talk about what are the responsibilities. Well, let's do like indie presses, like for serving the marginalized communities. What do we have to do? What do we absolutely have to do? What are things that we should be looking to do? What are presses failing to do? All that good stuff.
Well, what I experienced being with the Big Five Press, and this is not to say that they failed my book at all, the anthology, and it's an all POC anthology for people who don't know, which is kind of like very specific, obviously.
No, I just ordered an all deaf anthology recently. So those are really interesting.
They're very, very, very specific, but also at the same time not so abstract as to not be able to serve the larger market.
Sure.
Totally.
And so I think the issue is, and Bianca mentioned that on the marketing podcast I was talking about, was the issue of being overwhelmed. And so everything is a one fits all. And that's where indie presses have the strength. theoretically.
Yeah.
I use the word theoretically a lot because we
I
think
totally agree
it
with
should
you.
work, and it doesn't, because you have smaller staff, smaller budget, and you have to do so much more reach, whereas a lot of these big five are owned. I mean, Simon & Schuster is owned by CBS.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
You know, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna be on CBS. Like, it doesn't guarantee anything. But you're owned by such a large entity. You're in Midtown. They're right near Rock Center. That, you know, it really kind of makes it hard to distill what a book is, and that's due to budgeting, and that's due to belief systems, and that's due to who's there. Whereas I think I work for a university press, and we also have our issues, but with university presses and indies, there is that more hands-on quality, and hopefully being more strategic because you're acquiring less.
It's
Like,
good. Well, it's actually really good to hear you say that, because I mean, this is something that Katie has been very adamant about, and like, it's been tough for me because
what do you mean adamant about what?
about being strategic, about looking for
Okay.
making sure we're looking for, you know, women authors, writers, like, you know, people of color, you know, stuff like that. And like, it can be tough because you get so many submissions and you want more of those. You know,
It's also taste level, right? I mean,
Yes,
just
somewhat.
because you want more writers of color doesn't mean the ones you're getting are fit with your aesthetic at all.
It can be difficult. That's
Yeah.
you know, and that's really the big
Yeah.
issue is, like, you know, especially for us, like, we're looking for a third book, and it's like we want to make sure that we're doing something different than our first two. You know, we don't
Yes.
want to be like associated
Yeah.
with just like white male writers. That's it. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Leland
yeah.
Chuck has said similarly, and like we mentioned at the top, he's doing 713. A lot of his authors have been white, and he's Asian, and he's very pro POC. But this is also, he acknowledged that this is what works for his aesthetic. He likes humor, he likes a certain kind of voice, and he's not getting that from POCs. And this is what's working. And it's not because he doesn't have access. It's because of his own taste level, what he's published before, like you're saying, what not to publish again. So
think there's-
people are having issues, POCs as well.
interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean,
know?
and do you think there's like a way around that? Like, because I understand what he's saying, especially because, you know, he has an aesthetic, and like, it's, you know, it can be difficult. You know, you want to you read what you read, and you know, let's say you have no name on the page, he's gonna pick what he wants to pick, right?
Exactly.
But how do you get around that? Like, what do you think there are any good strategies to make sure that you're finding diversity without sacrificing your aesthetic or your vision, you know?
Yeah. I mean, he is a one-man band.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
y'all's a very small team.
Yep.
He's a one-man band. He brought on Hasathinka Sirisena, who is actually in my anthology.
yeah.
He brought her on as an editor
That's
for
right.
713.
Yeah.
And
To
is she
help.
the only other one?
She's the only other staff member.
It's just them. Yeah.
It's just these two people, both people of color.
Both
Is
unpaid.
she getting paid for this?
I don't know.
That would be
I
awesome.
just said both unpaid.
Both unpaid.
Again, like everybody doing this stuff, everybody's
I
unpaid.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
But
would assume that Leland's probably not, you know. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, you're putting that money in
Yeah,
as the
exactly.
business owner.
I mean,
upfront.
Brian's taken anything that we make from his book and
Yep.
putting it back into the press for
Yep.
future
Oh,
authors.
wow.
Despite being
So-
broke as shit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the realness.
So the panel that you were on, I basically learned nothing. Is essentially the take home message there.
You know, you
How to
learn to
get paid.
deduct your taxes and negotiate.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna negotiate a really high royalty and just put it back in anyways. You know, just to say I did it.
Yeah, I'll submit that panel for Philly.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, are
For
there
small industry.
Right.
publishing
are there any
today.
indie presses you think are doing really well in this aspect?
I do.
Well, I do want to first say that you said Leland brought someone else on, and do you think that was
Absolutely. 'cause
basically just having that eye, you know, from that
Absolutely.
perspective? You think that's like one of the biggest solutions?
Well, also, Hasi is in a university setting, whereas Leland is in New York.
Yeah.
Hasi is in New England. I think she's not in D.C. She's near D.C., so I think actually she might be Maryland. I forget. Like, she's Virginia, Maryland, like one of those, like, so probably not New England. But that's also another level of access when you're in the education field, when,
It's true.
you know, you're someone who probably does more conferences and stuff like that, you're actually traveling, whereas I don't know that Leland has as much time to do scouting.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing too, right? Because even big publishers use scouts. A friend of mine, Nana Bruhaman, who's also in the anthology. I swear, I'm not name dropping for the anthology specifically.
No, I love it.
Just
Get the anthology, read it. Everyday
into
People.
The conversation.
Yeah. What's the name again? Everyday People.
She has been doing scouting for other people, and she's a Ghanaian American author. And so they're like, well, who do you know? Do you know the African writers? And she tends to go to a lot of conferences.
Is she first generation? Do you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah, she is.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, but she lived in Ghana for a long time. Oh, she did. But she's American citizen. So I think she might have dual citizenship. But because of that reach, because she knows a lot of the African authors, it's like, well, who do you know? And we'll pay you. And so if you can afford to get that, or have someone volunteer their time or something like that, that can really, really help. But I think it's that foresight, because like we were talking about offline, in doing some judging for contests, and I've noticed this for more than one contest, unless it was specifically, and I tweeted about this yesterday, unless it was specifically for POCs, not a lot of POCs submit for these contests. And in some cases they're blind, in some cases they're not, but I can kind of tell from the writing, how they're writing about places, that I'm like, I don't think you've been to Uganda. Don't think it. Like, you're just talking about huts. Pretty sure they're not huts. And so, well, how do you get that out? You can't just keep tweeting. If they're not following you already, you tweeting it is not helping.
It's just there's no one there. It's an empty room. And
so you asking like POC channels to tweet. Twitter is such a fast mechanism. If you miss it, if you're not on from 8 to 10 or whatever, and it was tweeted at 9, are you going to see it?
Yeah.
Potentially not.
Right.
Again, it's like the assumption of the more we get people to share it, it'll be heard. And that's, again, in theory, accurate. But how are they doing it? Are they doing it via emails? Are they just posting on social media? Posting on social media is not enough. How are we actually getting to people? Not Poets and Writers. Publishers Weekly actually puts out calls to publishers and says, hey, we're doing this feature on Westerns. Do you have any books that might fit this feature? And they will send it straight to the contacts they have at a publisher. And then they'll get all these responses like, absolutely, we have this coming out in 2019 and da-da-da-da-da. Again, that's an entity that has that access, but also that time to do that. Are book contests doing that?
Yeah.
Are indie publishers doing that? Are they going to, the HBCUs? Are they going to all the MFA programs? Are they going to the creative writing summer conferences? Are they going to the Combilios or the Jack Jones retreats and da-da-da-da and say, hey, I have this. Can you email it to your people?
Yeah.
Not just tag you on Twitter. Can you share this on Twitter? And I'll do it like once, maybe twice if I remember. Can you put it in your newsletter? Can you email it to people?
Yeah, the newsletters.
Can you connect me with people? Will you be on my board? If I have a board, is it not kind of like this superfluous board that just is names? So you just, look at the names on our board. Are they actually helping you connect with these
CV
people?
pluggers or whatever.
Yeah. It's for grants. A lot of the time that's for grants. It's like, see, we have, Roxanne Gay on our board. And, you get a grant. Maybe. I don't know. So it's so much more work, and that's the thing. I think people think it can really just be this easy, and that's the whole issue that I saw in working in publishing and what We Need Diverse Books was everyone thought, okay, now we have this thing. We Need Diverse Books. So if We Need Diverse Books gives us our approval, and if We Need Diverse Books talks about our books, we're good. And that wasn't. It's like no. We actually need you to change the system.
Yeah.
Not gonna do that. Can you, but we hired more interns. Cool, but we need you to change the system.
Right.
Okay, we got more interns. No, cool. Well, we need you to change the system. Okay, we're going to have a pizza party for the interns.
Oh my God.
No, you need to change the system. It's pretty bad.
And what you're saying is really tough because, no, you're absolutely right. I think scouting is so important. And someone that we're trying to bring on now, and I'll just say it, Annie Krabenschmidt. She writes essays about what, coming to realize that she was gay and like all that, and like how hard it was for her and how funny it is in retrospect in some turns and twists. But yeah, I mean, she came and read it and I was like, I'm going to talk to you after we're done, like.
I think that's more of what we're really trying to do. I feel like Grey Wolf does a really good job at it. I don't know how you feel, but some of their books that have been coming out from African writers.
It's really amazing.
There's like this experimental wave coming out of some certain African countries that I'm like in love with, and that's something I would really love to find.
But if you look at Grey Wolf, a lot of their staff is not POC.
Really?
Still, I mean, they're doing better in terms of if you look at their roster, you'd be kind of shocked by that.
Right.
You're like, wait, you have Esme, you have Wyatt-Tu, you have Jamel, you have Carmen, you have like Percival Everett. Like you have so many POCs and yet on staff. And they're great. I love their books. I pimp their books all the time.
So they're doing a good job of picking. But
absolutely, and letting them stay to their voice, because all the authors I heard that have worked with them have loved them.
Yeah,
they didn't feel pigeonholed. They didn't feel like
we're reading She Would Be King and with my ninth graders.
Is wonderful.
Yeah, my kids. I don't know if you've read it, but they are making their own Bessas right now, their own version of Bessas.
And so they have like hearing that.
Yeah, I've been tagging her in all.
Yes,
they've been like drawing Bessa with like red afros and stuff. It was pretty cute.
Make sure to do it on Instagram because she's very much on Instagram, not as much on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
We saw at KGB. I'm gonna do my best to like remember things here. Do you remember that first reader who was writing this? It was oh my god, I almost want to get on Facebook to figure this out. Someone affiliated with Mason Jar.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Justin Sanders.
Justin Sanders. He's writing this like historical fiction, but it's like contemporary, and it's about like police brutality and stuff like that. Okay. And I heard him read at KGB, and I was trying to do that thing where I was coming up to him. I was like, when you're done this, like, it was like, I thought it was amazing, and it had so much energy.
And it was prose.
It was prose. Yeah, it's. I would call it. It's like In Cold Blood. You know how that's like fiction. That kind of deal. Yeah. But it's like about police. There was he read this scene about these white cops who had like swastikas on them or something. Like, I don't know. They're like Confederate something, some sort of racist thing going on. Yeah, and like he wrote about one of these like beatings and like, police brutality murders. It was really great. And I went up to him and like, I was just like, let me know when you're done. He was just like, yeah. Like, and it's just so hard because you got to catch someone right when they're like ready to have something finished. But I'm going to be on him for sure. For sure. I'm trying not to stalk. It's been like 4 months, but I'm gonna check up on him.
That's nice. I think that's a nice time frame.
Also, because we want to make sure that like we're not pressuring people that we're talking to. We don't want to be like, hey, like, are you done yet? Like, this is when, whatever. I don't know.
Because he also, or whomever, might just be like, well, let me see what you've done. Just like with the podcast, right?
True.
Like, let me see what you've done first to see before I say yes or no.
Yeah.
And that's just some people.
But that's true. I mean, frankly, that's why we're using our own books first, is because, like, any mistakes we make, we want to make sure we mess up on our own stuff and not somebody else's. But
that's
also,
that's all learning.
Yeah.
I mean, publishers don't know everything either. They make mistakes all the time. They just have more money to make the mistakes. That's the difference.
Yes, that's true.
They have way more money to do it.
Yeah.
Well, what about your writing? Are you going to read something for us?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
I will read something incredibly short.
I always feel like when we bring lit people on to talk about, especially people who are like editors or running their own publishing houses and stuff, we spend like Kate's and I were talking about how we spent so much time talking about Pen America, and we're gonna have her back on as her artist self soon.
God, hearing her read is an experience.
We're gonna do that in the next couple of weeks with the person who runs the operating system, Ile. Anyway, they run the operating system, so they're both gonna come be on the show. And
oh my god, I can't wait to hear.
Yeah,
I haven't heard her poetry in so long.
What are you reading?
I am going to read a short scene from a short story that has been going on forever.
So not one of the hashtag 45 scenes, 45 days.
Is this something?
I might have worked on this on hashtag 60 scenes 60.
Okay.
Is this another in progress, or is this something that you've already put up? Or
I thought it was done, and then I realized I get hit with things in the shower, and I'm just like,
I get that feeling all the time.
oh, this is how you fix it. Yeah. Oh my god.
That's why
yours is the shower.
No.
Mine's generally when I'm just anywhere else but in front of a computer.
It's on a bike too. When I walk or when I'm biking.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
That's why I really do preach patience with writers. That's like the first thing I say, is because like the longer you work on something, I'm not saying it's always necessary, but generally you're going to find things that like,
absolutely. And not even in the workshop. You can get
Yeah.
hit with all
By
this
yourself.
really good
Yeah.
information of how people are reacting and feeling.
Yep.
And you're like, yeah, cool, great, okay, I'm gonna process that. And then 3 months later, oh, it's none of that.
Yeah.
I figured
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah. A lot of times for me is I'll be talking to someone, like I'll be like talking at Katie about like, oh yeah, this is the part I'm writing and it's about this, and then in the middle of the sentence I'll be like, no, that's fucked up. Like this needs to be changed. Like
It felt so good.
Yeah, it felt
And
like
yet-
It's like once I encoded it into English, like from my head, it's like no, that doesn't work.
That happened to me too. Sometimes I'm dreaming and I said, oh my God, a lyric essay, that's beautiful. And then I wrote it and I said, this is really bad. This sounded so much better at 5 a.m. when I didn't want to leave the covers because it was super warm. I had to go to the bathroom, but I didn't.
Do you ever write any kind of poetry or anything?
I wrote poetry in high school because I was a big Dickinson fan. So I wrote a lot of
Interesting.
angsty Dickinson-esque stuff about my period.
Beautiful.
So bad. Very metaphorical.
Don't worry,
very
you don't have to share
symbolic.
that tonight. It's fine.
I still have it. I think it's just to say.
Oh well, in
"You've
that case,
grown. Grown, Jen. See, you were talking about Coke bottles and aspirins and cramps. You've grown. I've grown in the 20 or so years since I was an Emily Dickinson file.
We'll do a separate episode. On
Oh
that.
wait, so before you read, when was the last time you read it? That was like a year
I think
ago.
it was before the anthology came out. Yeah.
It was, yeah. So that was like a year ago, right?
It was more than a year ago. I
Oh,
think,
more?
at
definitely.
this point.
It was definitely more than a year ago.
It was,
Yeah.
Wow, that was a while
was it
ago.
warm out? I think it was warm out.
I don't remember that, but I just know it was more than a year.
I
ago.
think it was
Yeah.
warm out because my best friend was back in the States and he teaches overseas. And he didn't come last summer. He came the summer before that.
Oh, okay, wow.
So it was
So it's been a
almost 2
minute.
years. It was
Wow.
almost 2 years.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It was soon after I run the Niska Knife.
So maybe
Yeah.
like August, September 2017, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to hear again. It's been a minute.
Yeah. This is something completely different. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. It was hard to say how it started. Maybe it was when she came home, arms full of supplies, for some reason, and she knew why deep down there were always necessities, things as basic as butter or soap. Yeah, the rent was paid more often than not, yet she found herself stocking up regularly to keep them both fed, clean, and asses properly wiped. She entered their apartment to him and his friends spread out and around the living room like a broke-down Kool in the Gang. The same group she'd learned to laugh with and cuddled with Russell in front of. Russell and company had arms dangling off the sides of the sofa or limbs folded and stretched around the living room, end tables pushed aside for bodies to lay about, a kind of smoky astringent in the air. Maybe it was when she harumphed. Could have been the slamming of doors and cabinets to reveal her displeasure at everyone lounging, eyes glazed over, slouching with heads drooping every which way while she unpacked after a day with fourth graders. She simply wanted clean air and quiet. Could have been her reply of "get it yourself" when Russell said, "Baby, get me a soda," and the underlying oohs heard amidst his people when she stormed off to the bedroom. Perhaps it was the glance at the marble end table, a barrier along with the men splayed out on the floor where she spotted dust, remnants reminding her of wiping flour from her mother's countertop. Might have been a good idea for her to pay attention when one of his friends said Scarsdale in that playful yet mocking tone with, "Man, what you know about being black? You just look it," and light-skinned nigger with his light-skinned female, before someone else chimed in that light-skin and nigger didn't belong in the same sentence, which resulted in cackles morphing to coughs. All this was followed up with a crack of something and a "the fuck is wrong with you?" prior to the trample of bodies and the slam of a door. It may have been any of those things that led to Russell coming into the bedroom and pushing her hard. Her back was to him, so she thought it playful at first when her side got jabbed by the corner of a dresser, like he didn't realize his strength until she turned around, saw his face, and the smack happened. Holding a throbbing cheek, she cried, "Negro, you crazy?" before smacking him in the face. "Are you crazy?" he responded, gyrating his jaw to ensure plasticity. Russell pressed his arm, ready to launch. The signs were there. The eyes, the lips, the rage. And they went at it. Don't think she didn't go for the goods. He got hip to it, locking his knees as he twisted his lower half, going on to shove her into walls, onto the bed, against open drawers, leaving nicks. She had force too when she landed blows, chipping at every bit of him she could access. Bruised afterwards, the tears started up. They woke up to knots on foreheads, not just puffy cheeks, but puffy eyes from lack of sleep. He rolled on top of her, spouting love, pomp, and circumstance, and then he was in her. That was the apology. She moaned, and he was gentle again. They swore this was it. That was the lie.
Oof.
Brutal.
Also, the police siren went off.
I
Like,
know.
right-
How applicable is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I like it. Katie hates it usually, but I love it.
It worked.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was like a sound effect, and
Yeah. I hate it personally too.
Oh, okay.
During
When
during
it's-
my
yeah.
podcast when it's
I-
like, so let's talk about the publicity. You're like, woo, woo. You're like, God damn it.
I just love it. It's like that New York vibe, you know? I just
Yeah.
love the ambient
And this
noise.
took place in New York, so yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
The story takes place in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Where?
Is it nonfiction or fiction?
Fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fiction. She's nameless in the story.
Ooh.
Yes.
I like that when people do that, like have like call characters by, like the girl or something like that, or just like don't have a
Yeah.
name,
Yeah, it's hard as hell to write.
Yeah. But I don't know. There's something about like leaving it up to the reader and like having them take ownership of it that
Yeah.
I really like.
Yeah. I figured if what's her face who did like what is it, Bringing It the Bodies or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Hilary Mantel.
Oh, I've read.
Where they're all like Thomas or Henry, like they're 18
Yeah.
Sam.
Well, it's
stuff
historical
like that.
fiction, so like,
Yeah.
it's all those English motherfuckers.
Yeah,
you know?
and she doesn't. so
Thomas
you just-
Cromwell.
Exactly, and then she doesn't keep saying Thomas Cromwell. Like,
Yeah,
she just
yeah.
says Thomas. So you
Thomas,
just
yeah.
have to figure out after a
Yeah.
moment, like, okay, it's that Thomas.
Have you
not
ever read
this
those
Thomas.
books?
I read the first one. And
Did you
that's-
like it?
Yeah,
I
did.
loved it.
It was so good.
Honestly,
Oh,
it
is
was
that what
like-
this is inspired by?
Yeah, that
just-
inspired
Dude,
me.
To me, like Hilary Mantel is like the Scorsese of like historical fiction. Like
really good.
like
That's a pretty
bringing
good
up
endorsement.
What is it? Bring up the bodies or bringing up the bodies?
I think
It's bringing up the bodies.
Bringing up the
Oh,
bodies.
y'all have it?
No, seriously, it's
It's here
like
somewhere.
a gangster movie.
It's
It's
so good.
insane. Like I was like, this
Also,
is amazing.
Goodfellas. It says like very Goodfellas-esque.
Yeah,
like all the political
exactly.
stuff going on,
Yeah.
and then like how actually the bodies do start piling
Yeah,
up.
dude,
Yeah.
it's fucking wild.
It was such a good book.
But so that influenced this story.
Yeah, because I felt
Interesting.
like if she can do that with 18 Thomases
Yeah.
and 4 Henrys and all that stuff, I'm
I
like, I
see.
can do it with she. Mm-hmm. And initially, my workshop, or really my critique partners, they said, this is very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I will do this. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it work.
Yeah.
And it's solidified to the point where I took it to Tin House last year, and they said, no, this works. You just have to kind of not do tongue in cheek.
I see.
Like, because I capitalized she throughout when I met her.
I
And she
see.
said, don't do that.
Okay.
She's like, it's distracting.
Interesting.
And I
yeah.
say you're
It's
right.
like we know, we get it. Like
Well,
you
it's
know,
also
yeah.
it's also a lazy device, right? Because it makes
Interesting.
you not work as harder. Because you're like, see, it's the capital she.
Uh-huh.
You don't, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you actually have to work
Uh-huh.
for this. So if you mean, so it has to be her mother or her sister or she, or if there are 2 women in a scene,
Yeah.
use someone's name, or if you're going to use a pronoun, make sure the pronoun is attributed to the right person and that it's not confusing for the reader.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's just an added level of detail when you're kind of stripping someone of their name. And so it's interesting.
Yeah, one of my favorite devices is when people are doing something and you know what's going to happen, by the way the scene is unfolding.
Is that a good thing?
I really like it.
Okay.
Like, I wish I could articulate better why, because it can be done poorly, of course. But
when
like,
it's understood, but it's not overtly obvious.
yeah,
Like
it's
you're
like
invested.
it's like you're making the reader know on a level that like barely crosses the threshold of like the subconscious. So you're like, I know there's gonna be an abusive situation here, but like, or like something like a violent situation, you know, because she's about to, you know, it's a woman coming in who's very upset, like rightfully so, and like just by the way, like the masculinity in the room, I don't know, it's like I got it somehow,
Yeah,
you know, and like you did a good job of making me get it without, but like I still don't know yet. So then the tension's there. It's like I'm racing towards this point, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really cool.
It's also a good craft discussion too, because when I was in Boston at Muse in the Marketplace, I was talking about revision. And I was asking, are you writing to something or writing through something? And Amy Bender brought up something good at a talk.
That's an interesting question. Yeah.
It is, right?
That's a very
Because
interesting
Amy
question.
Bender was saying, what are we waiting for? At that starting point, right? What are we waiting for?
Right.
Are you
Right.
working? Are you as writer coming in like, I'm going to write about a car accident, but let's get to the car accident.
Yeah.
Or does the car accident happen and then it's about all the repercussions of the car accident? Do we need to be led into the car accident, and why? What is the reasoning for what you're leading to or what you're writing?
Or some
through?
people will do the thing where it's like, oh, you know, the murder happens. You know that already. Like it's already said. And then you go towards that point. I think that's really that's another one of those things where it's like it could really work. It could really not, you know.
Because we have epic novels that you're like, okay, something's gonna happen on page 600, but I gotta wade through 585 pages of a lot of stuff.
In which case, the book better not be about that, because like it better be about something else, or else like what am I doing here, you know?
Yeah.
So unless it's like, you know, your airport thriller, you know.
Yeah. So it's just a question. It's like, are you writing to something or through something?
Yeah.
Think about that.
But where did that take place in New York? I'm curious. Did you have an idea?
Uniondale, Long Island, or really Hempstead. Uniondale is a part of Hempstead.
Interesting.
Hempstead, Long Island, where I grew up.
Okay.
For a few years. Yeah. It's loosely based on my parents, and I emphasize the loosely because I don't know that happened, that moment happened, but there was an abusive relationship. They both opened up to me about that in my teens.
Both of them did.
Yeah, very different ways.
That is interesting. Yeah, I can imagine.
Very different ways. Yeah.
I can imagine there being two stories.
Well, my father just said it was my fault. The reason your mother and I aren't together is my fault. He didn't say why.
Yeah, he didn't go into
He just
detail.
said it was my fault. And my mother was the one who told me why. While we were going shopping, we were going to the supermarket, and just tells me, like,
Just
my mom
out of
does
nowhere.
this all the time. She just like blurts out some random stuff like, oh, I'm on menopause. And you're like, what? We're watching Game of Thrones. How does this applicable right?
There's a lot of, I don't know, women over 50.
There's a lot of beheading right now. I don't understand.
A lot of beheading.
I don't know how this came up out of nowhere. But okay. Here we are.
Wow.
She has stories. My mom's a very good storyteller.
We so appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Oh,
Definitely.
thank you for having me.
It's been fun.
Thank you all. And Rosie.
Yeah,
Who's
she's
been pretty chill.
She's waiting for her chicken.
She needs dinner,
Yeah.
She's been a little...
They're like, we're getting a business plan, Rosie. Chill out. Chill out.
Go check out, we said it already, but go check out Minorities in Publishing and buy Everyday People and see Jenn's awesome website and
Submit to me at Electric Literature
Yeah.
if you have nonfiction.
Definitely. And I told you guys that we were going to call you Jenn by the, throughout this episode.
Jennifer.
Yeah. Jenn.
Whatever.
Now it seems so stilted.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
It really doesn't matter. But I appreciate that people are so concerned, like when they said it with Jen and then they're like, I meant two N's. I'm like, it sounds the same.
They want to hold the end. One more beat.
Okay, that's it for today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and review on whichever platform you're listening. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at Animal Riot Press or Facebook and Instagram at the same name, or through our website, animalriotpress.com. This has been the 17th episode of the Animal Riot Podcast with your host, Brian Birnbaum, and featuring Jenn Baker. Transcripts for our deaf and hard of hearing animals are provided by Jonathan Kay, and we are produced by me, Katie Rainey. See you later, you filthy animals.
Yes, sir, it's the burn. Bombing on y'all and getting gully as the fern. I don't know much about Lee.